Translator, Ninetales. Editor, Fish Creek. Chinmu was utterly dumbstruck. He stared at Si Yunxiang, then turned and stared again at Granny Si at his side, wearing a vacant, wooden look. All this time, he had believed Granny Si was Si Yunxiang, yet now another Si Yunxiang had leapt out, and she was the current saintess of the Heavenly Devil cult. His thoughts instantly tangled into a mess. This generation's saintess also bore the surname Si, so he'd formed that first impression and kept probing, testing whether she was Granny Si. He had even deliberately teased the saintess a few times, wanting to see if she would grow bashful. Only the last time, when Si Yunxiang tested him, had he finally confirmed that Si Yunxiang was Granny Si. And now, this generation's saintess is much safer than the previous generation. The previous generation's saintess was simply a demoness. A white-haired elder let out a sigh. Even though they're both from the Si family, this generation's saintess won't bring harm to our sacred cult. Granny Si glared at him with blazing eyes. That elder turned his head away and pretended he hadn't seen anything. Si Yunxiang stepped forward and came to Chinmu's side. She was still a little shy, and she greeted him earnestly. Young Cult Master, Saintess Si Yunxiang pays my respects to Young Cult Master. Chinmu immediately returned the salute. Junior sister is too courteous. This generation's saintess is natural and unrestrained in her conduct. An elder sighed with rueful emotion, not like the previous generation who plotted to kill the sacred cult master as his wife. Granny Si erupted in fury and roared, "Old woman, I am still here. What do you old man want?" That elder instantly clamped his mouth shut and didn't dare argue with her. Saintess Si Yunxiang ain't someone who is easy to deal with. Chinmu's gaze flickered as he looked at the girl who appeared delicate and shy, thinking inwardly, her mind runs deep. The one who defeated Fozi should be her. Then she came to flaunt before me to test my limits of decorum. She had long known I was the young cult master, yet she still showed off in front of me. What was that for? Granny Si smiled. Si Yunxiang is from my Si family, and Patriarch personally taught her for a few years. Patriarch found her after he had already found you, and when he met her, he even sighed ruefully that if he had met her earlier, he wouldn't have chosen you. Chinmu looked at Si Yunxiang, and Si Yunxiang also happened to look over. Their gazes collided, and Chinmu saw the unwillingness hidden within her seemingly gentle eyes. Chinmu gave a faint smile. Si Yunxiang should have been nurtured under the young patriarch according to the cult master's rules. He even let her take Imperial College's examination in the same year as Chinmu to compare the two of them. Chinmu had never known that he had, in fact, been competing with this girl. How could she accept it, when Chinmu had been far too dazzling during the examination, defeating Taoist Ling Yun, and pressing all the way to the Emperor? No matter what Si Yunxiang attempted, she would only be eclipsed by him. There was no way she could be better than him. Meanwhile, Patriarch's test was to test Chinmu's capability in being a cult master. After testing, Patriarch had made up his mind, and the person he chose wasn't Si Yunxiang. Compared to her, Chinmu was more suitable to be the sacred cult master. However, Si Yunxiang didn't accept it. Therefore, after defeating Fozi, she came to flaunt to Chinmu. The young patriarch swept his eyes around and asked, "Heavenly King Qian hasn't arrived yet?" "Not yet." The young patriarch knit his brows. Heavenly King Qian always had a temper that burned with anxiety. No matter what it was, he was always the first to rush in. Now that he still wasn't here, it meant he was already unable to come. What matter could be more important than the ascension of the cult master? There could only be one reason why Heavenly King Qian couldn't attend the cult master's ascension. "Young cult master, you must treat the family of Heavenly King Qian well," the young patriarch said softly to him. Chinmu's heart trembled faintly. He was about to ask when the young patriarch announced with solemn weight, 360 halls, unfurl your flags, and meet at Saint Arrival Mountain. Whoosh. The gigantic flags snapped open, swallowing the entire manor beneath their billowing expanse. When those huge flags were drawn back, the City Lord's manor in Harmony Prefecture City had vanished without leaving even a trace. Where the City Lord's manor had stood, only a swath of pale, empty ground remained. When the vast flags that had shrouded them overhead disappeared, Chinmu looked around and was shocked to the core. He could see that they had already left the bustling Harmony Prefecture city and arrived at a place that didn't resemble the mortal world. Above his head was a circular sky. Beneath his feet were mountain ranges, soaring upon an illusory ground. One could not reach the sky by ascending, and one could not reach the earth by descending. The green mountains were fresh and verdant, yet no sun could be seen in that sky, and no land could be seen when he lowered his head. This mountain seemed not to be situated within the mortal realm. "This is Saint Arrival Mountain?" Chinmu looked around and saw range after range of mountains. Some palace halls were hidden deep within the forest. They should be the palace halls built by the sacred cult. However, the young patriarch didn't bring him to tour those halls, and instead brought him before a cypress pine. That cypress pine was lush and emerald, and it had existed for who knew how many years. Beneath the pine cypress stood a straw hut, spotlessly clean. The hut showed no sign of decay from the passage of time. There was a large rock under the cypress pine. The young patriarch walked beneath the cypress pine. The 360 hall masters, 12 cult protector elders, 8 great supervisors, 3 great cult heavenly kings, and the left and right guardians all sat down beneath the cypress pine. The young patriarch motioned for Chinmu to step forward and said, "This mountain originally stood in the mortal world. Back then, when the founding master of our heavenly saint cult came here, he saw a woodcutter chopping firewood. The tree he was chopping was this cypress pine. When the woodcutter chopped firewood, he did it with an ordinary rhythm, yet within that regular movement there seemed to be boundless marvel. Meanwhile, each time the cypress pine received a chop, another piece would grow out, restoring it to its original state. When the founding master realized he had encountered a saint, he sought counsel from that woodcutter. That woodcutter then transmitted his path beneath this cypress pine, and once he began, he continued for dozens of years. The founding master gained endless comprehension, yet he still wasn't satisfied, and thus he asked the woodcutter, 'How does one become a saint?' Chinmu listened with full attention. The young patriarch paused slightly, then continued, 'The woodcutter said, if one wishes to become a saint, one must first establish one's virtue, establish one's merit, and establish one's ideas in writing. These are the 3 immortal deeds.' The founding master asked again how to attain the 3 immortal deeds. The woodcutter said, 'Clear logic, clear understanding, clear teaching. The 3 clears become the teacher of all the people.' Thus, the founding master was completely enlightened. The young patriarch lifted his head and gazed at the cypress pine that had weathered the transformations of time. The founding master understood that to become a saint, he first had to become the teacher of all people. Therefore, he organized the saint's teachings into writings and compiled them into a record, which is now known as the Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures. When the founding master wrote out the Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures, he attained clear logic. He then traveled the world and spent a few hundred years imparting to others the principles the saint had imparted to him. The principles which the saint had imparted to him became his own principles after he had taught them to others. From one's mouth to your ears, from your mouth to his ears, this is understanding. The founding master attained clear understanding. As for clear teaching, the founding master founded a cult to recall with fondness how the woodcutter had shown him the right path. Thus he called it the Heavenly Saint Cult, and established the cult's doctrine. The saint's path is nothing other than the everyday use for common people. Anyone who does otherwise is heresy. To act straightforwardly, to follow the course of nature, that is the meaning of path. That is the origin of our cult's doctrine. Below them, even though all the hall masters, guardians, and elders were high-ranking figures, most of them were attending the cult master's ascension for the first time. Even the cult protector elders and cult heavenly kings weren't familiar with the history. They had originally believed that the cult master's ascension would involve some earth-shaking ceremony, and they never expected the young patriarch to begin by speaking of the cult's past. As for this legendary tale of the founding master, they had seen it recorded among the cult's ancient records, but it had only been fragments and scattered pieces, nothing as detailed and stirring as how the young patriarch described it. What clear teachings meant was to impart, to teach. The founding master founded the cult to impart the saints' teachings to everyone in the world. He managed to become the teacher of all people, possessing clear logic, clear understanding, and clear teaching. He established his virtue and established his words, but he didn't establish his merits, and thus he did not become a saint. The young patriarch continued. In his later years, he pondered and pondered, yet he didn't know where his merits lay. Even though the founding master did not become a saint, he had established his words for the saint and founded a cult personally, perfecting his virtue. By attaining the 3 clears and 2 immortal deeds, he had already far surpassed countless ordinary people. Chinmu, are you willing to inherit the founding master's virtue and words, his logic, and his understanding? Chinmu bowed and cupped his fists, stretching them forward. Disciple is willing to. The young patriarch smiled and said, in that case, the cult will belong to you. You will have to shoulder this responsibility. Chinmu replied with solemn gravity, disciple will shoulder this responsibility. The young patriarch's smile was gentle. Go and sit on the rock. Chinmu stepped forward and sat upon the rock beneath the cypress pine. The young patriarch looked down, and his voice rolled out with deep resonance. This rock is Saint's Rock, the saint's seat. Back then, the woodcutter who guided the founding master was a saint who descended from the heavens. He had no blood ties with the founding master, no benefits to gain, yet he became a teacher and transmitted skills to the founding master only because the founding master sought to learn from him. The one who sits on Saint's Rock is the cult master, but he will also be the sacred teacher of our cult. His gaze swept across every hall master, cult protector elder, supervisor, heavenly king, and guardian. He commanded solemnly, all of you, perform the disciples' rite and pay your respects to the sacred teacher. The 360 hall masters, 12 cult protector elders, 8 great supervisors, 3 cult heavenly kings, and the left and right guardians all maintained the disciples' rite. Saintess Si Yunxiang hesitated for a moment, then could only follow and maintain the disciples' rite as well. Disciples pay our respects to sacred cult master. Everyone shouted as one, the sound reverberating through the entirety of Saint Arrival Mountain. The young patriarch turned his eyes to Granny Si and said in a solemn voice, Li Tianxing, the new cult master has already ascended, so why aren't you showing yourself? Aren't you going to impart the technique of our cult? Are you going to bring the sacred technique of our cult into your grave and bury it completely? Granny Si's body shook, and an ancient voice issued forth. Disciple. Follows teacher's decree. She was clearly a woman, yet she spoke like an aged man with a coarse, rough voice that carried an overbearing awe. However, he did not dare act unbridled before the young patriarch. Granny Si walked to Chinmu's front. Chinmu was about to rise when Granny Si's palm pressed to his forehead. Golden lights shuttled back and forth between Granny Si's brows, and along with those golden lights came all manner of sounds, as they tunneled into the space between Chinmu's brows and poured into his mind. Cult Master Li, someone whispered below. At this moment, the one controlling Granny Si's body was the previous cult master, Li Tianxing. Even though he had been assassinated by Granny Si, he had also planted himself within Granny's Dao heart, turning into the devil in Granny Si's heart. Waiting for the moment to replace her and become the woman he loved most, all kinds of chaotic voices rang out inside Chinmu's mind. It was as though there were lectures from the 9 heavens above, devils whispering beside his ears, Buddhas chanting scriptures within his heart. Indescribably strange. The voice of the saint? His heart suddenly jolted as a possibility struck him. That voice was the voice of the woodcutter. What Cult Master Li imparted to him was the scriptures that the woodcutter had imparted to the founding master. Translator, Ninetales. Editor, Fish Creek, Capital City, Imperial Preceptor's Manor. The official registrar hurried in at once, bowed, and reported, Imperial Preceptor, but there are strange upheavals in Harmony Prefecture City. The upper echelons of Heavenly Devil Cult have all converged upon Harmony Prefecture City, and countless bandits are gathered there. All of a sudden, the City Lord's manor in Harmony Prefecture City vanished like smoke, leaving behind only a stretch of pale, white ground. Eternal Peace, Imperial Preceptor was perusing the memorials the Emperor had delivered to him Without even lifting his head, he answered, "Understood." The official registrar hesitated, then said, "Imperial Preceptor, this is the Heavenly Devil Cult, the #1 sect of the Devil Path. With such a matter happening beneath our very gaze, we cannot afford to be lax." Eternal Peace, Imperial Preceptor raised his head and asked, "Yunyang, do you know who the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult is?" Official Registrar Yunyang shook his head. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said evenly, "If you knew who he was, you wouldn't be in such a fluster. He is none other than the Grand Chancellor of our Imperial College." Official Registrar Yunyang's heart shook as though struck by thunder. He cried out, "It's him?" Imperial Preceptor, the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult, has actually served as Grand Chancellor of Imperial College for so many years. This is outright rebellion. Over all these years, how many officials and generals has he instructed? His influence must have seeped into the Imperial Court, perhaps even into the army. Imperial Preceptor, this cannot go uninvestigated. Our ranks might already be filled with his people. Eternal Peace. Imperial Preceptor fell silent, then shook his head. "You are thinking too far. The Heavenly Devil Patriarch teaches scholars, so those scholars become people of Heavenly Devil Cult? If that were true, would you also seize and execute me?" He rose and paced with unhurried steps, his gaze keen as a blade. "Back then, when I roamed the world seeking knowledge of every kind, I saw that each sect acted by its own rules and cherished only what belonged to itself. This shackled the progress of divine arts, paths, and skills. Thus, I chose to visit the great sects, wishing to break their barriers. The first person I met was the Heavenly Devil Patriarch. He was the first to cast aside sectarian prejudice and teach me with his whole heart. He was also the one who pointed out to me a clear road." His eyes shone with deep respect as he went on. "After that, he personally recommended me, and had me carry his letter to meet the Tao Master of Tao Sect. Because of that letter, Tao Master regarded me differently and took interest in me, allowing me to read the 14 writings of Tao's sword. It was also he who urged me onward to Great Thunderclap Monastery to meet Rulai and obtain Rulai's teachings. Though he never disclosed his identity, he could not conceal it from me, nor did he ever attempt to." Official Registrar Yu Yang was struck dumb beyond words. Eternal Peace. Imperial Preceptor said, "Why did I invite him down from the mountain to help me oversee Imperial College? It was not because of his ability, nor because of his identity as the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult. It was because he possessed broad-mindedness. It was the first time I had ever seen such a broad-minded person, someone so pure. Therefore, he alone could take charge of Imperial College. Now that he has departed, he should be occupied with the next cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult." The next cult master of the Devil Cult. Official Registrar Yunyang steadied himself and said, "Heavenly Devil Cult has gone more than 40 years without a cult master, and they are choosing one now? Imperial Preceptor, this is of utmost importance. Should we report it to the Emperor?" Eternal Peace, Imperial Preceptor said, "Write a memorial and report this matter to the Emperor. As for the background of Heavenly Devil Patriarch, there is no need for you to mention anything." The official registrar acknowledged, then reported again, "There is news from Imperial College. The Emperor has issued a decree for Gu Linuan to succeed to the position of Grand Chancellor." "Understood." Eternal Peace, Imperial Preceptor lifted a hand in a small gesture and said, "My power is too great. It is only natural for the Emperor to feel wary. Otherwise, even I would not be at ease. It's just that Gu Linuan's talent and virtue are not fit to shoulder the role of Imperial College's Grand Chancellor. He is acceptable as a junior protector to the Crown Prince, but wholly unfit to perform a Grand Chancellor's duties. However, I cannot say much on this matter." Official Registrar Yunyang pondered briefly and said, "Then, how should we handle the new cult master chosen by Heavenly Devil Cult?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor replied with indifference, "Flourish if he goes along, die if he goes against. There is no need for you to trouble yourself over this. I will meet this new cult master in person." Official Registrar Yunyang withdrew from the room. Tao Sect, Tao Mountain. Dan Yangzi climbed the mountain in swift steps and arrived at Tao St. Hall. A white-haired, white-browed elder sat there on the ground, his gaze fixed upon a pool of bluish-green water before him. Dan Yangzi spoke at once. Tao Master, unusual changes have occurred in the nest of Heavenly Devil Cult. The experts of Heavenly Devil Cult have all gathered in Harmony Prefecture and unfurled their huge flags, and the City Lord's manor has vanished entirely. The white-haired, white-browed elder opened his eyes and said slowly, "It seems Heavenly Devil Cult has a new cult master. Heavenly Devil Cult fabricated history and imparted a false path under the guise of a counterfeit saint, bringing calamity upon all people. Internal strife arose within their cult. The saintess slew the cult master in cold blood. This violated the general principles. And the cult master marrying his disciple violated human relationship. The cult practices evil skills, and quite a number of them use human lives to cultivate. Caring nothing for backgrounds, they had no cult master for 40 years, and now one is chosen today. I fear it will not be good fortune for the common people." Dan Yangzi asked, "What should our Dao sect do?" "Investigate the identity of this devil cult master and wait for a chance to eliminate him." "I received your decree?" Dan Yangzi asked again. "Eternal peace, imperial preceptor takes the doctrine of Heavenly Devil Cult as a goal. Thus, Eternal Peace Empire is practically a large-scaled Heavenly Devil Cult, teaching irrespective of one's background. What should our Dao sect do then?" Dao Master's gaze grew deep. He quietly watched the bluish-green pool, speaking neither too quickly nor too slowly. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor harbors a flourishing ambition, but his ability cannot bear his ambition. In history, there were empires larger than Eternal Peace Empire, and talents more outstanding than Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, yet all turned to dust, becoming great ruins. This world is far more complicated than he believes. He will understand when he crashes into a stone wall and is battered badly. Dan Yangzi did not dare say more. He bowed and retreated. Reporting to Rulai, Heavenly Devil Cult's followers have disappeared without a trace in Harmony Prefecture, along with the City Lord's manor. Great Thunderclap Monastery. An old monk came to the throne hall to report to Rulai. The magistrate of Harmony Prefecture belongs to Elder Yu Lin of Heavenly Devil Cult. A terrifying figure. Harmony Prefecture has already become an iron fortress for Heavenly Devil Cult. There are also those who saw the girl who defeated Fozi in Harmony Prefecture. We suspect she should be from Heavenly Devil Cult. Rulai opened his eyes, astonished, and asked, "Isn't that girl a scholar of Imperial College? How could she be from Heavenly Devil Cult?" The old monk replied, "That girl is called Si Yunxiang, and only entered Imperial College this year. There was absolutely no time for Imperial College to teach her anything, so how could she possess the ability to defeat Fozi? This girl comes from the Si family, the same family as the previous cult mistress, Si Yuyu. The Sai family is also a prestigious family in Eternal Peace Empire." Rulai asked, "Then is the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult from the Sai family?" "It is not known. There is still no news." Rulai nodded and said, "Imperial College used the Saintess of Heavenly Devil Cult to defeat the Holy Son of our Great Thunderclap Monastery. We cannot let this rest. You may withdraw. Continue to have each and every monastery scout for more information." That old monk accepted the decree and said, "There is also one more thing. Ma Wangshan has come out from Great Ruins." After saying these words, he turned and walked down the mountain. Old Rulai was stunned. Saint Arrival Mountain. All manner of mysterious voices rang beside Qin Mu's ears, wondrous beyond measure. In a blink, his vision swam, and he found he had become a passerby, walking along mountain paths, while from afar came the steady sound of wood being chopped. He walked toward the sound, and saw a woodcutter chopping firewood beneath a cypress pine. The woodcutter's axe traced a mysterious rhythm each time it fell, captivating Qin Mu, making him feel he might grasp something from it. He stared dully at the woodcutter's axe. Each strike carved a deep notch into the cypress pine, yet when the axe rose again, the tree's wound returned to normal, leaving not the slightest mark behind. As the woodcutter split the tree, every swing gave Qin Mu a different impression. "Passerby, after standing here to look for such a long time, what do you see?" The woodcutter drew back his axe and turned to look at him. "Your family has already turned into skeletons buried deep beneath the earth. Your children have grown far older than you. Your grandchildren have already started families and have children of their own. Passerby, you have stood here and watched for 100 years. May I request teacher to teach me? Chinmu watched the woodcutter sit upon the rock beneath the cypress pine and begin to impart his understanding to him. Listening in intoxicated awe, countless marvelous principles streamed into him. Sitting by the rock, he listened for dozens of years, and the unity technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures was bestowed upon him through that wondrous lecture. The woodcutter reached out and touched the crown of his head. Chinmu opened his eyes and saw Granny C drawing back. He was still on Saint Arrival Mountain. He was still in the present and had not returned to the past. This was the teaching of the previous cult masters of Heavenly Devil Cult, imbuing what the founding master had encountered back then, passing it down generation after generation, the flame never going out. Chinmu sat upon the rock, dazed. The saint touched my head, binding my hair to pass me longevity. The unity technique of great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures had neither words nor pictures. It could only be handed down from one cult master to the next. Numerous intricate fragments of information surged through his mind, yet they could not form a system. This imbue, though it had not raised his cultivation, had brought him far too many things. He needed time to sort them out and comprehend. Now he understood why the founding master had said this. Unity technique could only be passed from cult master to cult master. It was because there was no unity technique formed in great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures. Or one could say the unity technique was not yet formed. The unity technique of great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures lay hidden within the woodcutter's lecture on the rock. However, this demanded that each previous cult master comprehend the lecture for himself. How much they could comprehend, and what they could comprehend, depended upon the sacred cult master's own understanding. They would choose their own directions, their own wisdom, and their own fortunes. It could be said outright that the unity technique each sacred cult master comprehended was different. Perhaps the concepts were somewhat alike, but the unity technique of each sacred cult master was definitely different from the others. 360 cult masters would yield 360 cultivation methods, and 10,000 cult masters would yield 10,000 cultivation methods. Chinmu's first thought was fraud. What a fraud! This legendary unity technique could not simply be used as is. He had to comprehend it on his own. His second thought was that this was the true teaching. This was what it meant to be a sacred teacher. What you comprehend is yours. What you learn is others. The passing down of techniques in Heavenly Saint Cult held something other sects, including Imperial College, could not match. The young patriarch finally let out a long breath and looked at Granny Sai. Cult Master Lee's voice from Granny C's mouth. Teacher, I'm no longer the sacred cult master. This is my chance to break the devil in my heart. May teacher not get in my way.